and welcome to week 2 of Breakfast Time Vocabulary. So this week we have a brand new theme for you, and this week we've chosen the Victorian theme. So the reason we went for this was because when you study 11 plus tech, and even when you go to secondary school and GCSE, you're going to end up looking at texts from the 19th century, so the Victorian period. So it's really important that you start to familiarize yourself not just with like the themes and the types of stories, but also the vocabulary that they use. So when you read these texts, generally the style and grammar is quite modern. It's very like similar to what we do now, but the use of vocabulary is sometimes a bit different and often seen as quite formal. Now, a lot of those words that they use, they're still in use now, but they're not, they're becoming a little bit archaic. They're maybe sort of falling out of fashion a little bit. But it's still really helpful that we learn some of these words. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video today. So for this video, we're going to start off by going through 5 new words for you. Now, don't forget, when you're listening to these words, make sure that you're looking at the spelling that comes up on the screen, scribbling down the words, trying to get them stuck in your head, and also have a go at using these words in sentences in the comments below, because every week we pick out our favourite sentence and we send you a little special prize to say well done for all your hard work and effort. So don't forget to watch these videos and get involved in those comments. So let's dive into word number 1. So word number 1 is pernicious. So the word pernicious means something, so it's an adjective, and it means something that sort of has like bad, detrimental, sort of almost like dangerous effects. And it tends to happen over a slow period of time. So if we were going to use this in a sentence, we could say something like, the pernicious effects of the deadly disease had a terrible impact on people's lives. So it's this idea of something like harmful and horrible that's maybe happening over a slow period of time. So for context, like with history and things like that, maybe during the Victorian times or even earlier, like the medieval times, there were lots of horrible illnesses going around that we didn't have, that we sort of hopefully don't have to this day. So for example, things like the plague, we learn about that a lot in school. So if you were talking about that in context, pernicious would be a great way to describe like the impact that that had on people's lives. Word number 2 is the verb perambulate. So this is a great word. So to perambulate essentially means to kind of walk around. Now, during the Victorian period especially, lots of gentry and like posh, fancy, noble people would walk around in big parks and things like that. And they'd come together just to kind of walk around, but to be seen within society. So a really good way of using this in a sentence would be something like, the aristocrats used to perambulate through the manicured gardens of their estate. So this idea that they're kind of like walking around, not really with any purpose, necessarily doing it for exercise, but they're just there to kind of be seen and be seen as being important. Word number 3 is the noun parlor. So a parlor is basically a room within a house. So this is a word that we maybe don't use very often now. We don't tend to refer to parts of our homes as parlors, depending on the size of the house that you might be living in. So the way that we would use the word parlor is it's almost like a bit of a synonym for a sitting room. So you could say something like, the wealthy people gathered together in the parlor to sit down and discuss politics, something like that. So it's the idea of like sort of big fancy houses and this special sort of sitting room that they'd have for everybody to come together. Okay, word number 4 now is an adverb. So this word is ostentatiously. So just have a look at the spelling of this word as well, because it's not the easiest word in the world to spell. Now, ostentatious almost means like over the top, showing off, like something that's very showy and almost in your face a little bit. So if we were going to use the word ostentatiously, we could talk kind of historically maybe about like how people dressed. So we could say something like, the nobility often dressed very ostentatiously to show off their wealth to people. So it's this idea that things would be like, very highly decorated and adorned with like lots of little jewels and gold and things like that, and sort of royal colours as well. Okay, and the last word for today is the adjective quaint. So quaint normally means something that's small, but also quite attractive in appearance. So you could describe how the small streets of like medieval times or little villages, you could say like the quaint villages or the quaint medieval villages attracted lots of different tourists to come and visit and see the historical sites. So there we go. Well done. Those are 5 new words that we've gone through today. So they're loosely kind of based on the Victorian theme, but lots of these words as well, we've chosen them because we've seen them in 19th century texts. So in the next video in part 2 on Wednesday, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about where you find some of these words. Like, what are these texts that we're referring to that you might be studying as well in the future? But for now, Make sure that you practice these words, try and use them in your own sentences and conversation. One of the best ways to do it as well is to also head to the comments, write your own sentences, enter into our competition, and we look forward to reading your sentences and giving you some feedback very soon. See you on Wednesday for part 2.